Nancy, tell us about your career. Like, obviously, you've done this for many years, um, and you've made such an impression on a number of people's careers over the years. Like, what got you in the business?
Yeah, so it was kind of, as so many people say, it was kind of an accident. My degrees are in English and philosophy, and I was in graduate school. I was in Oregon, actually. I'm from Oklahoma, as an aside. And I decided I didn't want to be in graduate school anymore. So I called my folks back home and said, I'm coming home. So I got home and I couldn't find a job. And this was still in the days when there were want ads in the newspaper. And my mother had read an article about this thing called a landman. And she said, "It sounds like you get to do a lot of research and drive around. And I bet you'd like that." And so there was an ad in the paper, and I called this title lawyer who was training landmen. And I called him and he hired me. And he said, "You've got all this great background. I think you'll be really good at it. A lot of research." And I was really good at it. And I found out I loved it. And so that was in 1980. That's a real long time ago. And I started out in the field running records, pulling books in the county courthouses, buying oil and gas leases. And that's really how I got started.
That was back when landmen did all the land work.
We
It was
did all of the land
pretty.
work, and a lot of folks don't know, but I'm not particularly tall, but a lot of the county courthouse books are enormous, you know? They were about as tall as I am, and I thought, "Oh my, how am I gonna do this?" But
Well, that's
but
that's
it
where
was a lot.
you get to apply your landman skill of making friends.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Or they made friends with me because I could climb higher.
Yeah. Well, you get the low books, they get the high books. It's
Yeah.
all going to work out to
Yeah.
get.
Yeah, it does indeed. So anyway, that's how I got into it, and, I was in the field, oh, I don't know, for 3 or 4 years, and then I was playing tennis one night, actually taking a tennis lesson one night, and somebody came out and said, "Nancy, you have a phone call." I said, "A phone call?" So this is long before cell phones, and I thought, "Who even knows I'm here?" And this guy on the other end of the phone, I went in and I answered it. I said, "This is Nancy McCaskell." And he said, "Hi, I'm so and so, and somebody told me to call you about a due diligence deal." And I said, "Oh, great, great. That'd be wonderful." And he said, "We're interviewing people in downtown Oklahoma City at the Skirvin Hotel. And I wondered if you'd be interested in interviewing." And I said, "Yeah, great. Tomorrow would be perfect." And he said, "No, no, no. We're interviewing people tonight, and we're gonna decide tonight, and we're in Pinstripes Bar." And I thought, "Oh, no." And I was standing there in my yellow wind pants, and I said, "But look, I got on wind pants." And he said, "Well, if you wanna try, just come on down." And as we all know, field land menu, never ever pass up work. And
Yeah.
so I got in my car and drove down to Pinstripes. And as I was walking into Pinstripes Bar in my little yellow wind pants, Pinstripes was exactly what it sounds like: men in pinstripe suits, smoking cigars and cigarettes and drinking scotch. And as I was going in, two of the most powerful brokers in all of Oklahoma City were walking out the door. And I thought, this is gonna be bad."
I'm just bebopping in here with my yellow wind
Yeah,
pants.
yeah, here I am. So, of course, people kinda stared at me, and I went in and I talked to these guys for about an hour, and I lived in Norman, and I went back home, and I thought, "Well, I'm not gonna get that." And about an hour later, my phone rang, and it was a lawyer from Oklahoma City, and he told me who he was, and he said, "I want your address." And I said, "Okay." So I gave him my address, and he said, "We're delivering 37 title opinions to your house by courier. They'll be there in an hour, and we'll see you in the morning at 8:30." And I said, "You mean I got it?" And he said, "Yeah, you got the job." And so it was to acquire companies out of bankruptcy, and I was off to the races. And so I did that for another year, and then they hired me. I was not even quite 26 years old to be their vice president of land.
No way.
So, yeah.
So
Yeah,
at the
that's
time,
what I said. No way.
is yellow your favorite color now?
No, it just, should be.
Your lucky
That's the
color,
lucky
for sure.
color.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lucky color.
It's
That's
a
exactly right.
fitting landman color, yellow on the map.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
money.
yeah.
So interesting. So in your early 20s, were you just an independent field landman, or were you
I
working
was
with
an
different?
independent field landman. I started out working for this title lawyer who was really, really smart. Didn't like to do stand-up opinions. That's really what everybody was doing in Oklahoma at the time. And I was good at running title, and
You were
he
his
taught
stand-up
me.
part of.
I was his stand-up. I
Yeah.
would write all these really great ownership reports and requirements, and he would tell me where I was wrong or what needed to be better.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of,
Man,
it made me really good.
like that's exactly what I was going to, what a great opportunity, because it's you can learn the mechanics of doing land work, right? Especially that field, that title examination part of it. But where you really learn is when you realize what you messed up or what you didn't interpret
Right.
properly. And I always tell
Right.
like all of our new landmen, the first year of your existence, 2 or 3 years even, is just learning the mechanics of doing the work, right?
Yeah.
And where you start to see it come full circle is when you can do that work, and then you get a chance to read a title opinion and do curative and all those things. And it's like, I remember for me, and by the time I got to do curative, I was maybe 4 years in, but it's like, I thought I knew all these things, but I didn't get to see what was misinterpreted or what needed to be done to really clean title and perfect title until I got to do that curative. And so you having someone, you do your work and it goes straight to an attorney and then they give you that feedback, you were at such an advantage.
Yeah,
And
it was so helpful. It was just really cool because, to your point, I was able to see how to rectify these mistakes that people made, or I saw where things had been misinterpreted. It was just a blast. I just loved it.
Yeah. So then you went in-house, right? After you did that work due diligence for a while?
Yeah, the little yellow wind pants ended up as a result of acquisitions of 3 companies out of bankruptcy, Oklahoma Bankruptcy Court, so Western District, State of Oklahoma. So that was a lot of fun, and this company I worked for was small, but it was in the acquisition business, and that's what we did.